Hi kids, it's Mr. Ink here. Here's your lesson on how to complete the square to make equations into standard form of a circle. We've been talking about circles. So what I'd like you to do really quick is just pause the video and just write down day 90 circles complete the square and your objective. I can identify circles by completing the square. Okay, so the goal for today, we're going to have equations that are like kind of crazy and big looking. But remember, we have a standard form of an equation. We have x minus h squared plus y minus k squared is equal to r squared. And so our goal is to make it look like that, because we could easily find our center by using h and k. And then our radius, we could take a square root and we could figure out what the radius is, right? By looking right here. So that's the goal for today. We won't be graphing. You know how to do that already. We're just one of the things you have to be able to do, and it's this standard right here, is you have to be able to look at an equation that looks kind of crazy and be able to complete the square. So complete the square, you'll recognize we did that a couple months ago. It's coming back, so but you'll be just fine. You'll do just fine. Okay. All right, here we go. So here are the steps. Why don't you pause the video and write the steps down. Okay. So the steps are: move all constants to the right side of the equation and x and y terms to the left. Organize each set of x and y terms. Complete the square for the x terms, then the y terms, and then factor and simplify. It'll be pretty simple. At first, it's going to look a little crazy, okay? So I'm going to do a couple of problems here. You could go with me, along with me, as I go. So, but the directions say convert the equation into standard form. So on this equation, what I need to be able to do is turn it into what I saw earlier, what I showed you at the beginning, which is right here. How do I get it to look like that? Okay. So the first thing I would do is kind of organize all my x's. So on the left side, I notice I have x squared and negative 4x, so I'm going to just put those together, okay? The next thing I want to do is put my y's together, and I notice there's y squared and negative 16y, okay? Which are right here and here, right? So, and then I want to move my constants to the right, so I'm going to add 13 to both sides. I don't want any constants there, okay? So, and then I start grouping. So remember before we used to do complete the square and we just had like half of the equation to do? Well, today we're going to do two complete the squares, okay? So I'm just going to focus on this x squared minus 4x term. So then I'm going to focus on negative 4x right here. So we're going to complete the square here. What's half of negative 4? It's negative 2. When we square it, negative 2 squared is positive 4. So I'm going to add 4 to both sides. Alright, so we added 4 to both sides. Now we're going to focus on the y's here. So we're focusing on this middle term here, negative 16y. What's half of negative 16? It's negative 8, right? So negative 8 squared is going to be positive 64. And I'm going to add that to both sides, okay? So, oh, it's going quickly. Sorry about that. Let me slow it down. So I'm adding it to both sides. And now remember, when we complete the square, these two terms right here on the left, or this term on the left, is a perfect square trinomial, right? So all we got to do now is think of what's the square root of x squared. It is x, and then what's half of negative 4? Negative 2, and then we square it, right? And then the same thing with this next term right here. What's the square root of y squared? Well, it's positive y, right? And half of negative 16 is negative 8. So again, square root of y squared is y. Half of negative 16 is 8. And then we square it. Then the right side, you just put it together. 13 plus 4 plus 64 is 81. And that's it. Now, doesn't this look like what it's supposed to? It looks exactly what it's supposed to, right? So we could easily now, you know, this original equation was kind of crazy looking now. But now that we have this new one, it's like, cool, like we could figure out where's the center. It's at 2, 8, and our radius is 9, so that's why we do this, right? A lot easier. The other form is what's given to us. It's used for other purposes, but you know, this is part of you manipulating it, And this is something you need to be able to do on the test in May. So talking to mostly you juniors or sophomores or freshmen that are in the class, you need to know how to do this. This will be on the test, okay? Let me do it one more time for you a little bit more quickly, okay? Number 2, we got x squared plus y squared minus 32x plus 25 is equal to 0. So the first thing I'm going to do is organize my x's. I got x here and here, so I'm going to take up both of those and move them down, okay? Then I want to focus on my y's. Next thing I notice is I have y squared here, but it's y squared's on its own, which is real nice. So since y squared's on its own, we don't have to complete the square because y squared's already a perfect square, right? This term on the left, x squared minus 32x, is not a perfect square, so we're going to have to complete the square with that. But this y squared, awesome. It's going to be a lot easier, and you'll see that. Then we have these constants, 255. We're going to subtract 255 on both sides. So we got this new equation, okay? So now we're going to complete the square. So I'm going to group up my perfect squares here, okay? And I'm going to focus on x squared minus 32x. I'm asking myself, what's half of negative 32? It's negative 16. Negative 16 squared is positive 256. Sorry, it's a little squished there, right? Now this y squared, we don't have to complete the square because it's already a perfect square. So we're just going to move forward. We got x minus 16 squared and then y minus 0 squared. And all that's equal to 1. So again, I got x by figuring out what's the square root of x squared. Got negative 16 by finding out what is half of negative 32, because I know this is a perfect square trinomial, right? This is a perfect square, right, already, so I don't have to worry about it. And if I subtract 0 from it, does it change anything? No, it doesn't change anything. It just stays the same, but now I know that my center is at 16, 0, right? It's all equal to 1. Square root of 1 is 1. So it's going to be a little tiny circle. All right? So we should have these written down. Pause the video here, and then we're going to do a little practice. All right, let's do some practice. Okay, so what I'd like you to do is do 3 problems. That's all you got to do for me before we come back tomorrow. Do these, and then on the next slide, you're going to check your work. Okay, here we go. Here are the answers to numbers 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so we'll come back tomorrow and we will do the little quiz at the beginning. All right, thank you, kids.